My space is shifting. Familiar spaces, familiar faces, altering placement, concerns for displacement. Uptown is the spot, Harlem is where I stay. People create the energy in their space. A neighborhood is one's home, memories on each block. Between avenues giving good and bad news, sense of community seems to be slipping from my fingertips, feeling distant. Uptown is the spot, Harlem is where I stay. History of people in these homes and these spaces surrounded by familiar faces, place called home. This space is your world, altering in time. Empty corners, empty spaces, filling with unfamiliar faces, altering in time, refurbished, refurnished, refreshed. The familiar pace of space shifting, drifting, memories becoming hazy. Cherishing each forgotten thought, every block holds a memory, recollection of the recollection of each turn of a corner I take. Memories come to play, hangout sessions in the parks and friends' stoops, loud music's playing from my neighbor's window, block parties and summer BBQs, sidewalk tournaments of chess and dominoes, adolescent fights, old folks bickering of past times, first kisses and heartbreaks, pocket change heading to the 24-hour safe haven bodega right down the street, supplied with necessities of one's desire, everything you need on a daily basis, loud music playing from the various tongues of the owner's choice, lottery tickets played for richer dreams, trusting enough to know you'll pay the next day. Uptown is the spot, Harlem is where I stay. My space is shifting, familiar spaces, familiar faces, altering placement, concerns for displacement. Uptown is the spot, Harlem is where I stay. People create the energy in their space. A neighborhood is one's home, memories on each block, between avenues giving good and bad news. Sense of community seems to be slipping from my fingertips, feeling distant. Uptown is the spot, Harlem is where I stay.
You don't know your community until you step out and you come back and you give it another look and another, another lens. And it's so much things have changed. And my friends don't live here anymore. Some of them moved to the Bronx more. And it's like, because everybody's moving them out to the Bronx. And it's cheaper to live in the Bronx. Even I was considering moving out to the Bronx. But I don't want to, like I was thinking, like, if I ever get to move, how would I feel about leaving my neighborhood? And I cried because I can't. I feel so connected with it.
Uptown, New York City, has been undergoing a rapid pace of change, specifically my neighborhood, Harlem, a place I moved into when I was about 10 years old. Since leaving for college, each time I'd come back, I noticed a new crowd of people moving in, empty lots transformed into condos, and mom and pop shops were bought out by big corporations. This sudden transformation concerned me, and I couldn't recognize the place I left 4 years ago. The history of these streets seemed to slowly disappear, and I couldn't remember what places existed before these new establishments took over. It has come to my attention that my very own neighborhood was undergoing gentrification, an unexpected change that no one was ready for.
I would describe gentrification as the influx of the upper and the middle class and well, not necessarily, but it's kind of the displacement of the lower class just for economic growth.
They're not like being forced out or anything like that, but they just, sooner or later they're
going to be displaced because they can't afford it.
They really have no choice.
There was a thing called white flight, where with the decay of urban cities, white Americans left these cities to flee away from taxes, crime, whatever, and everywhere. And when they went to suburbia, it fouled them, and they said, "Why are we driving? Why are we spending 3 hours a day on the Long Island Expressway? Let's move back into these cities." So for me, it's about, people don't talk about where people get displaced, where the black population of New York City has declined. The Hispanic, the Puerto Rican, Dominican population of New York City has declined. And it's about having affordable housing so people, whoever they are, can live in New York City.
I wanted to film the changes that were happening in my neighborhood. and document the process. When I started to shoot, I began to feel uncomfortable with my camera. There has been a lot more tourists and newcomers arriving into Harlem. Tourists, newcomers, arriving, unfamiliar. I'm mindful a lot of them are fair-skinned like me, and I don't want to be taken as a tourist in my own neighborhood. Mindful they are fair-skinned like me, I am not a tourist. This is a place where I grew up, and a place I call home. This is home, where I grew up, where I blossomed into the being I am today. Where I grew up, where I blossomed into the being I am today. Where I grew up, where I blossomed into the being I am today. Seeing how some of the new neighbors act in the community frustrates me. Filming the changes of my home. Uncomfortable. I am not a tourist. There's rare eye contact, lack of care, and not a lot of interest of getting to know the neighbors. It's as though they are living here blindly. There's lack of care, rare eye contact, no interest of knowing thy neighbor. Living blindly to one's community creates no sanctuary of a once familiar haven. My family and I have a close relationship to the neighborhood, especially my mother. She's known by a lot of our neighbors and businesses, but mainly by the old heads. She's always made it essential to know the people you live around, because at the end of the day, it affects us all. This is my home. Where I grew up, where I blossomed into the being I am today.
Harlem's considered the mecca of the black experience in America. If you ask people about Harlem, the first thing they think is Black America. Harlem is where most people think of successful blacks, not just jazz, because it's well known for its jazz culture as well, but blacks who are up and coming or well-to-do. That's what Harlem personifies the American dreams for Black America. You know, they say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Well, if you can make it in Harlem, you can make it anywhere.
There's so much glory and so much good stuff in this community. There is no place in the world like Harlem. Just Harlem, not even New York City, not New York State. There's no place in the world like Harlem. It's just so different and diverse and good but bad at the same time. It's everything. In Harlem, I can go from a brownstone, being in a brownstone, being at a wine and cheese event, to a fucking project party. Like, it's just so great. It's great. It's great. I love it. You can't get that nowhere.
You're so nice, don't you?
It's really ground zero. It's convenient to everything. I mean, if you look at Harlem from east to west, you know, the train lines, the way they stop. I mean, the one way over, then the D and the A, then the 2, and then the 5 and the 4 over on the east side, and the 6. So everything runs through Harlem. It's narrow enough. It's accessible to everything. Get downtown in 20 minutes, 10 minutes. And so, you know, Harlem is pretty convenient.
Crime rates aren't that bad anymore. I remember you couldn't even walk down the street at 1, 2 in the morning, and now I feel completely safe walking to my house at 4 a.m. So I guess that's the upside, but the rent is getting crazy. But that's the one conversation we definitely have at the dinner table often, you know. So, and it's about what do you want to do next. And the conflict now is my parents want to move out of Manhattan overall because they see that the prices are going up, they're skyrocketing. So you wouldn't be able to live on this island at all at some point. It sucks.
The generic paradigm was affordable housing. What was affordable housing? Nobody asked that question. Myself and a few other folks asked that question. How does one determine the concept of affordable housing? How does one get around this whole showpiece that they have, which is called Community Benefits Agreements, CBAs, Community Benefits Agreement. And Community Benefits Agreements were probably the most classic bait and switch three-card Monte game ever played on a society because, first of all, they're not legal, they're not bound contractually by any law. One doesn't sign a contract with them that's actually binding to the contractor, the developer, the city, the state, or anybody. So basically you're sitting there and you're giving somebody carte blanche to come in and build something that they tell you they're going to build, and then they get in there and you sign off on it, and everyone else has put their signature on it, and the city said, okay, it's gone through this, the community board's passed off on it. You know, those who got, sit back and say it's a good deal.
Harlem has quite a lot going for it. And real estate agents and the real estate people, they're not oblivious to that. You know, the know-how, the soul-has, and all these fancy little designations that they start throwing to different parts of Harlem to make it appear more marketable. You know, a lot of the old Harlem residents, they don't call Harlem those things, but you look at the ads and you see the brownstone that's being sold for 1.7 million, and you know, it might not just be Sugar Hill anymore or Hamilton Heights anymore. You know, so a lot is happening in Harlem.
What tends to happen is, it's kind of like illegal, I think it is, but it just tends to happen, and then it becomes a norm. But real estate professionals or real estate sales agents or rental agents tend to brand the community and create a name for it, and then that name sticks. So when I was in real estate, when I was like, one of my WTF moments was when they started calling west of Broadway Hudson Heights. So anywhere like above 165th Street up to Fort Tryon Park, that's west of Broadway. That's including Fort Washington, Pinehurst, Haven, Cabrini. That area was marketed as Hudson Heights in the real estate division. So it was something that was brand new, and I was like, when I first saw it, I was like, what the hell? Like, that's Washington Heights. That's not no Hudson Heights. That's Washington Heights. But what they were really trying to do is advertise it as something totally different that wasn't part of Washington Heights to attract people from downtown to come and buy or rent up here.
Like, I see abandoned brownstones where I live, and I see all of these other stuff. So I was like, you know, like, why is this abandoned? Like, it's so precious. Like, people should go and really invest. But it's like, no one has the money to. And if they did, it's like people who are not from that neighborhood. So slowly, my neighborhood has changed in the past, like, 3 years I've gone to school.
I think anybody's entitled to live where they want. My problem is that when you move into a neighborhood, have some respect for the history, for the culture. And I'm gonna explain the word Bogart for people who don't know. Bogart comes from Humphrey Bogart, meaning you come in and just taking over. You can't do that.
Trash cans flooded, tumbling onto the ground. My body consumes the contaminated winds. Trash cans flooded, tumbling onto the ground. My body consumes the contaminated winds. Heart ready to throw itself out of your chest silent. Worse enough are the dark skies, aggressive calls from strangers, loitering in front of buildings and leaning out of their windows. Worse enough are the dark skies, aggressive calls from strangers, loitering in front of buildings and leaning out of their windows. One left turn and I recognize the empty lot on the left and unkept garden on the right, my building straight ahead. I secure the lock leading to the lobby, then the one to my home where I'm safest, until shots are fired through a once quiet night. Neighbors I know not to trust just yet, for calls for help if ever needed in these rough streets. Neighbors I know not to trust just yet, for calls for help if ever needed in these rough streets. No sirens sound at any point in this cycle. Accustomed now to this new building and a neighborhood already stuck in its ways.
That Harlem is all of New York. It's just the black experience encapsulated in one area in New York. When I say black experience, I mean the experience that you expect to get the street hustler on one corner, the doctor on another corner. It's every walk of life in 20 square blocks. I understand growing up in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and growing up in Brooklyn, when you thought, even Harlem portrayed in the movies, Harlem was always portrayed as this faster place. You know, it was just fast paced. It was on the cutting edge. It was always the different. It was where you went back to see history and roots. That was Harlem.
Harlem, people from Harlem have this thing instilled in them when you have to look flashy and fly, and it's real. It's real. It's just this is where we come from. We're Upper Manhattan. We are the center of New York City. Like, we are New York.
Me being a businessman, you know, why not get top dollar for your property that I own? Why not get top dollar? The market says that I can get it. Why not? That's common sense. But as far as the ones that might be pushed out, you know, New York is a place for the rich. It's not a really place for the poor. That's first of all. So they're making it some metropolis, whereas if you got money, you can enjoy New York. You know, if you can't afford it, you need to move on. People, so everything changes. The only thing constant is change. And business doesn't stop moving. There's the history. Like, you know, you got a lot of famous people that walk these streets here. So these streets will never die. This is legendary all over the world. Most people that's moving in now, they're from France. Out-of-state people, in and out of state right now. Property value right now is $5 million a piece. You hear that? $5 million a brownstone. All right? So, hey, listen, if you know what I know, you need to come to Harlem.
Since there has been a lot of change happening in the neighborhood, I wanted to have a conversation about it with my family and a close family friend, Jackie, who moved into the neighborhood a few years ago. I wanted to know her experience and opinions on the current matter.
So I came to Harlem, I guess I always loved Manhattan. Always loved Manhattan. And just like anything else, it's interesting. I was priced out of Brooklyn. I lived all my life. Priced out of Brooklyn, and yes, as your mom said, my church was there. And as the Lord so have it, they were wise enough to buy a second property and had the space there.
What part of Brooklyn were you living in?
Crown Heights. So
everything belongs to majority of churches in Harlem. Abyssinian is the
property owner.
The property owner a lot. So basically, go on each block. There is up to 5 churches in each block.
Yeah.
And they owned by the churches.
I am not a proponent for these big corporate structure, because I think just the organic way of community and, you know, the people in the community is what we build it and make it. That is being eroded, you know, with these big corporations coming. Okay. They're so far removed from what's happening here, and they're all about just making a dollar.
I saw those guys develop 7th Avenue, right? 8th Avenue. But you know what? All the lower storefronts were bare because the landlords were waiting for some super duper tenant that would pay them what they wanted. Right. In the meantime, the stores that the community would like to move in had no chance to move in because of the rents those guys were asking, and they will probably be able to get a tax write-off as well. So the point is that what the landlords want are oftentimes at odds with what the community wants.
You got to think about it. The city's putting a lot of money into rebuilding Harlem to what it should be. Not necessarily, you know, the people that's in it, but rebuilding it, bringing more jobs up here, just actually making it look like a place that even a tourist want to come to. So you got to think about it in ways that's more that positive direction they're going in. In other ways, you have to deal with the fact that they're pushing a lot of the native, Harlem people out because the prices are going up. Everything's being changed. They're putting condos everywhere. Soon they're going to push out the projects and put condos there too. Everything's either a condo or a co-op, and if you're not with it to afford it, you have to go. It's sad, but that's how it's going.
I have another magic trick for you. Want to see me make all the white people disappear?
59th Street, Columbus Circle, 125th Street next. This is the Uptown A Express going to 27. Change for the AA local across the platform. The D. On the upper level, change for the number 1 Broadway
See?
train.
What'd I tell you?
Uptown A, 125th Street next.
I would be on the train, like going down or coming back uptown, and I'd be like, there are so many white people on this train. Like years ago, like when I was still in high school and I graduated in 2010, white people would stop at like 110th, most 116th, but now I see them going past my stop, going uptown, because now like they live here and this place is like, it's not as threatening anymore. And I remember when gentrification first started happening in our neighborhood, there was this guy, he was like, white people around here, I'm not accustomed to this shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but now it's like we have to get accustomed to it because it's happening.
Yeah, and a whole citizenry over from 125th to 135th Street has been displaced. And all I got to do is go over and drive over there towards Dinosaur Barbecue before you get on the bridge. You see they knocked the gas station out of there. Everything else is gone. Columbia's in their building. You can go on their website. You can see a site of what they're building biological labs and whatnot. High tower biological lab. That's not going to include those people who used to live there. It's not going to include those people who live over there in those housing projects, unless they're going to go there and work as security guards or custodial service or that sort of thing, because they can't qualify for the types of gigs that are in there. So when you say displacement, the displacement over a period of time is going to have a longevity as long as the change remains in place, and the change is an ultimate continuum.
The Manhattanville area of West Harlem is the target site of a large and costly expansion project by the prestigious Columbia University. The private Ivy League school says that it needs more space to accommodate its growing student body and research institutions, and that the project will create thousands of jobs for the community. Those opposed to the move worry that many of the jobs will not become available for years to come, and that they may come too late. The announcement of the expansion had already attracted a number of real estate developers to the area, and has since accelerated gentrification and community displacement as rents continue to rise as a result.
Columbia University is a key partner in deciding the future of New York City. They're not just an educational institution, they're one of the leaders of the city in deciding the course of growth and development of the city and who stays and who doesn't.
Harlem's experience with gentrification and an influential university using its leverage to collaborate with state and private sector elites in large expansion projects is not an anomaly. Places like Boston with schools like Northeastern University, Baltimore with Johns Hopkins University, and Richmond with Virginia Commonwealth University, along with a number of other cases across the country, reflect a growing trend.
The story of Harlem here is really a reflection of the stories of Harlem across this nation. And it is about what are we going to do. This is not just a local problem. It's not just a Harlem problem. What's happening in Harlem is happening in the Bronx and Bedford-Stuyvesant, where these communities are being lost, where people are being driven out, and deliberately so, as a result of public policy. And these plans are governed and driven by the market.
Money is it's a lot of money in Harlem. Millions, hundreds of millions, billions. Harlem is cultural capital, yes, but it's also financial capital. Ultimately, money talks, and money is really talking in Harlem. And the ones that have the most money, apparently they're having the biggest say. If you don't have money, I mean, this is America. If you don't have money, how much or what kind of say? Because that it's not to say that if you don't have money, you don't have a say, right? Of course you have a say, but money just seems to be speaking the loudest.
And I just find it interesting that you have to have an influx of white New Yorkers to move in these neighborhoods for the services to go up, for the schools to be better, to get better sanitation, to get more police protection.
Right. Those services should have existed before.
Why not that happen before gentrification?
Right.
We're still paying taxes, we're still New Yorkers.
Right.
Everything will get better because of the demands that are going to come from the upper class. Like, for example, just like a little thing on our block, there were no street lights on the corner of our block, so there were always crashes. And we would, like, us and the residents in the building, in my building, we would all talk about it, like, oh, they need to get a light up. They didn't put a light up for years until they made the new building across the street from me, where, of course, white people are moving in, paying higher rent, etc. And they're the ones that got a light up there so that the crashes would be prevented because they demanded that. And of course, the city is going to listen to those who are paying more and those who are going to bring it directly to them.
Do you smell that? It smells like change, and it smells a little funky. I have this strange feeling in my bones that something isn't right. The place I grew up in seems to be transforming. I'm trying to keep my eyes peeled open because each time I blink, there goes something new or replaced. I feel like there is this broom sweeping over and crushing what's left of our neighborhood, making sure nothing gets left behind. But where do these bits and pieces go? Under a doormat to be stepped on and having to rebuild a once comfortable home, or discarded in a trash bin and left for someone else to deal with? Seems like the voices that seek to find out are silenced by the cold hard green placed in their palms and given no answers. There are nothing but questions unanswered, and a vortex that is coming in and ripping the root of history in one's community. But then there are some who are in the eye of the storm, where it is quiet and calm, and just watching the chaos around them because they do not know what to do. Gentrification? A gentle process or a horrific one? Something that seems so unstoppable because capitalist eyes do not see empathy, but have larceny in its heart and survives on the greedy appetite which feeds on the hardships of others by piggybacking on their shoulders, weighing down hopes of having a better life in this nightmare called American dream. Who is it to blame if we strive on the economic system that we so much rely on? Who do I turn to complain when money has no face because it is in the hands of too many people and I am directed from one line to another, trying to figure out who is at the top when it gets way too complicated? Memorable places are becoming unfamiliar, Starbucks and corporate stores popping up left and right, being the markers of change and welcoming a different crowd than those from the neighborhood. Questions like, wasn't that there? And when did that come here? Only to reply with confusion. I smell it all right, and it's smelling a bit funky.